Greetings from Prescott, Arizona. My name is Martin, and I'm going to be guiding you through the installation of an NMO antenna mount in the cab roof of my Toyota Tacoma. And we're going to get right to it, basically with a screwdriver or a butter knife or any convenient tool. You pry off the cover of your dome light, and then you remove the two screws which hold the dome light to the support inside the headliner. It's basically a, I don't know what you would call it, not a strut, but kind of an arch of sheet metal that strengthens the roof, just about where the roof on a Tacoma changes in level. It's got kind of it's a little bit higher in the back than it is in the front. So then I just looked backwards and looked forwards to see what kind of space I had, and I decided to go in front of the dome light, that is front towards the windshield, so that it's on the lower level, more in the center of the roof than if I'd put it farther back. And now you can choose which post you want to bring the wire down through. I chose the one just behind the passenger's window, and so in order to access the space behind the headliner, remove the hook for the coat hanger hook over there, or support, whatever, and it allows you to get underneath the plastic molding and underneath the headliner, which that molding holds in place. So now moving a little bit forward, that is towards the front of the truck, towards the window, you can see that the headliner has been loosened. It takes me a while to get around to the side of the truck. Now basically you can pull the top of the post, and you can access the edge of the headliner, so you can pull the cable right through there, which you'll see in a minute. So this is the opening, and you'll see the wire which is going to guide the coaxial cable through the above the headliner. I've already poked the wire through there just so you can see what it looks like from both sides. But I'm going to remove it here in a minute, so you can see that it's pretty easy to poke it into that opening at the edge of the headliner, and just aim it towards the dome light, and it'll come out the opening. It's a bit less than 1/8 inch diameter wire. You want something stiff enough so that it doesn't bend when you put it up in there, but not so big that it won't make the curve. I actually made a little curve in it before I put it in there, so that it follows the curvature of the cab roof a little bit. So basically aim your wire towards the dome light, and then just push it up, and there's nothing up in there, so it'll pop out the hole. Now I put a block of wood up in there to pull the headliner down a little bit, so that when I'm drilling I don't poke a hole in the headliner. I confess it didn't work very well because my drill bit was too long, but if you use the right tool, which I didn't have, you can probably drill the hole without making a hole in your headliner. So this particular drill bit, it's actually intended to drill holes in wood. It's a hole saw. So although the bit, which is actually made for steel, goes through the roof fairly easily, now that I've gotten down to the hole saw is now touching the metal of the roof. It makes a nice scratch, and it did dig a little bit of metal out, but it's not made for cutting through steel. And so I ended up with just kind of a little trough there, a circular trough, which I now have to drill a 3/4 inch hole in. So this is the outside part of the NMO mount. It's a brass ring, and basically I centered it over the hole, that I drilled and marking with a pencil, because now I've got to cut this out another way because the tool was not made for this job. If you've got the proper tool, you can probably use just one tool to cut your hole, but a wood saw is definitely not the way to go. Now I started with a Dremel, but a Dremel is just not powerful enough to drill through a steel roof, so I switched the bit over to a cordless drill. And now what I'm doing, I'm going to kind of speed this up. I'm drilling holes just inside the circle that I drew with a pencil, and then I'm going to basically cut out that whole piece of metal within the circle. So I'm drilling holes as close together as possible, just inside the penciled circle. And now with needle nose pliers, I'm using a multi-tool. Can basically just tear out the ragged piece of metal that's left in the middle. And what remains to be done now is basically just to clean up that hole and so that it will fit the NMO mount. So here's where a Dremel is the right tool, with a stone bit for grinding steel. Smooth down the ragged hole so that it's well, I didn't actually make it circular. I made it slightly elliptical because I wanted more metal there for the NMO mount to grab on. The NMO mount is only going to grab on two sides, not on the whole circumference of the hole. And so I made those two sides actually the sides of the cab, not front and back. So front and back, it's a little bit longer. That's the longest part of the ellipse, and the other sides are a bit short. Because the NMO mount, as you look at it, it can actually just slip in sideways, and the part that actually grabs is long. So those will be grabbing on the shortest side. So it has the most metal to grab onto. So that's just a test to make sure that it fits. It's not going to go in that way. The cable's going to go in first. So now take the far end of the cable, I think it's about a 10-foot long coaxial cable, and push it down through, and with your other hand you can pull it through your dome light hole. And I'm speeding this up. It actually takes a little bit longer, but I didn't want you to watch me feeding the whole 10 feet through. So basically you just pull it all through, and now you're going to orient it so that it's going to be the way it's going to be permanently mounted, which is that little right-angled thing going off to the direction where you're going to take it over to the post. So now I took a piece of basically just red duct tape on the end of the wire, which is fed through, and on the other end I'm attaching the end of the coax so that I can pull it through the headliner. Make sure it's on there pretty good, but you'll see in a minute you're not actually just going to pull it through. You're going to feed it so that there's not much tension, because you don't want it disconnecting from the wire halfway through the pole. So once it's on fairly tight, you feed the wire with one hand while you're pulling the wire. Feed the coax with one hand while you're pulling on the wire with the other, and within less than a minute you have the tape coming out with the wire on the other side. As you can see here, the red tape, a little bit farther, there we go, the red tape is already out. So now you just disconnect the wire and continue pulling it all the way through until the coax is you've taken up all the slack out through the gap in the post there. And once you have it there, you can go ahead and fix your NMO mount on the top. You can put your dome light back together. So this NMO mount comes with a rubber O-ring, and so that you have a waterproof seal. Now the little brass tightening ring at the top, it has a groove on the underside which accepts and slips right over the O-ring and keeps it centered when you're, well, if you can finally get it on there. There you go. So when you tighten it down, it will center the O-ring right over the hole. So before you get it perfectly tight, locate your mount exactly where you want it in the hole. You can kind of push it from side there. You see him push it from side to side so that it completely covers the hole, and your O-ring is completely sealing the roof. I didn't show it here, but once I had it hand tight, I used pliers to tighten it down completely. So now all that's left to do is to route the coax over to where your radio is. Mine happens to be bolted to my glove compartment cover or door. So I'm going just underneath the molding there from the post. Now, if you do it the way I did, which you don't have to, you're going to run into some obstacles inside that space there. Two very big ones. They are a lot of plastic, which are part of the seat belt roller assembly. So that whole space inside that post is nearly almost all filled up with this plastic. But since the coax is quite narrow, quite thin gauge, I found no problem in just stuffing the coax behind the plastic. And when I popped the molding, or whatever you call it, that covers the post back, it popped in just as if there was nothing under there. So once I got it down to floor level, it comes out the molding just to the left of where you see the floor piece there. Now you can just pop off the molding on the floor, and since I'm going up to the front of the cab, I'm going underneath the molding, which is at the edge of the carpet, right about where the door closes on the bottom. And you basically just remove a couple of screws, and then you can pop it up with your hands or with a screwdriver. Once you get it coming up, you'll see that the attachments are just they're just pressed together. So you can pop it up and you can pop it back down. As you'll see later, you can. I decided just to take the whole thing out, although I probably could have managed with it flopping around there. It was easier just to remove the whole thing, and then work the cable around. You want to make sure that the cable doesn't get pinched when you put the thing back. So there are holes there where these little protrusions, not sure what you call them, little tabs on the plastic molding fit down in there and snap in. You want to be sure the cable doesn't go into one of those. And I just replace the molding, put the screws back, and I was already up at the glove box, so just went behind a little bit more molding, and the cable had vanished. Now this is a Larsen 48-inch long 2-meter antenna. You screw it on, and you're good to go. And that's pretty much how it's done. Hope you enjoyed this. Wish you all success.